I do not think I have ever been as worried about a video game as I have been for Elden Ring Nightreign. The game is great, but it's also filled to the brim with issues. Problems that I feel like FromSoftware will ignore and leave this game in the dust over the years. The gameplay loop of Nightreign is extremely simple on paper. You pick your character, ride a battle bird to the map, drop down and start killing things. The goal is to get the best weapons, level up and face the night, with the third day bringing you to the final boss, a Night Lord. There are also many characters you can choose to play as, and it's fun and very addictive. It offers seemingly infinite replay value as every run will be different from the last. I really love these characters. All of them are really unique in the sense that they belong in the world. The characters themselves include Wilder, who is a badass knight, Duchess, a swift and nimble assassin, and Revenant, a cute girl with a dark secret. These are just 3 of the game's 8 characters. Paired with the fact that every character has their own personal quests and story, it's guaranteed that the player will find one that they like. Every character also has their own line of skins, with many of them being references to Dark Souls and even Bloodborne. It's very minor, but considering all of these skins are obtainable by playing the game, it's great characterization and just really cool. They also have unique abilities tied to their kit. For example, Duchess can turn back time to damage enemies, while the Revenant can raise the dead. These characters really make you feel powerful when you play them. They are legendary heroes who have been tasked with taking on the night, so it feels appropriate that they also feel good to play, especially because a lot of these skills take almost no time to activate, allowing them to be used all of the time. This also leads us into the general gameplay feel of Nightreign, which is much different than Elden Ring's. Nightreign introduces many new mechanics into the game which FromSoft has never tried before. This includes an extremely fast sprint, climbable walls, and most importantly, different dodge rolls for every single character. Someone like Duchess, for example, has a double dodge similar to the one in Bloodborne. She can dodge twice in succession, which also makes her my favorite character to play in the game. Someone like the Recluse, who is a mage, has the most iframes in the game, while the Guardian, who is meant to be played as a tank, has the least. All of these unique gameplay mechanics work extraordinarily well in Elden Ring's much more demanding combat compared to Dark Souls. For me, a lot of the bosses in the base game have extremely long combo chains which are not very fun to avoid with just your basic Dark Souls 3 dodge roll. But Nightreign completely solves this problem by making every mechanic feel great and appropriate for the boss roster. It makes me wish that the base game had these mechanics. That is how good they are, and I cannot stress that enough. One last quality of life feature is the UI. It's very clean and in my opinion much better stylized than the one in the base game. Just something small that works wonders. Upon completing the tutorial, you will be transported into the Shadow Roundtable. It is genuinely interesting and has a great aesthetic. Reminds me a bit of Majula. It also has a training area where you can burn time while waiting for matches to begin or test out any weapon you'd like. Another thing which I find great is how you can find a lot of these characters just sitting around doing something. As someone who considers the original Roundtable as one of the diverse hub areas, this one is amazing. Nightreign currently has 2 different modes where you can choose which Night Lord to hunt: solo and triples. Solo used to be almost impossible when the game came out. Thankfully, it has received a lot of fixes over the days, but it is still far from the intended Nightreign experience. A lot of enemies and bosses in Nightreign are, for a good reason, gang fights, and they usually don't really demand the player to play perfectly, but in solo they do, especially the Night Lords. Some Night Lords can definitely be fought solo, but others are just miserable. Take the Sentient Pest, who is most of the time a gang fight where you have no way to see what is going on around you. This is why I believe playing this game solo is just not the way, but I hope From continues to implement more fixes and updates into it so it becomes more manageable and more fun. When the game initially released, there were a lot of complaints about how it lacks a duo mode, and I have to agree with these complaints. While I think the best experience you can get in the game is in trios, most people find it really hard to organize a group of 3, much preferring to play duos instead. That's not to say that playing duo with a fill doesn't work. Hell, even playing fully fill works, as most of my early Nightreign runs were done with 2 total randoms and I've had a blast. Shout out to these 2 random Revenants who fall my every ping. I've unfortunately not had the chance to play this game in a full pre-made lobby, but I did play with my friend with a fill, and in most cases we had great success where the third player genuinely tried their best to play with us in mind. Take this one game where we were both down against Gladius, the first first Night Lord, when this absolute legend of an executor managed to clutch the fight for 2 minutes straight and revive us, allowing us to finish the battle and win. This is my favorite moment I've had with the game so far, and the game has no shortage of them. Now, of course, there will be some cases where the players you play with will genuinely just not care about you and do their own thing. This is either because they are new at the game or just trolling. It's why I believe this game absolutely needs some sort of communication system, either that be via voice call in game or just chat. I've noticed that Nightreign is trying to push a Discord server for the players who are forced to play Phil, and I don't really know how I feel about that. I don't think players should need to queue up with others on a Discord server just so they can communicate with each other. If any sort of communication is added, which I hope it is, I know that moderation has to be put into place, but every single multiplayer game has these features, and the fact that Nightreign does not is very bad and can screw up a ton of great runs. Unfortunately, the map which acts as a playing field of Nightreign is always the same. There are a few things that change, such as the ruins and dungeons having different loot and bosses, but the general structure is the same. This can change a bit when you defeat the first Night Lord, adding different environments such as a volcanic crater or a snowy landscape, but these are very small areas that do not allow for much flexibility. And from what I know, only the volcanic crater is actually useful as an area. I think while it may be pretty difficult, having a different map biome for every single Night Lord could genuinely be a great addition and go a long way into immersion. Imagine going into an expedition against Libra and the entire map is similar in aesthetic to the Abyssal Woods, making you uneasy as you fight more madness enemies and immerse yourself in the hunt. Or imagine hunting the Fisher in the Fog, while the map is a snowy landscape similar to the mountaintops with a lot of frost enemies. Another problem is that every single Night Lord expedition has mostly the same enemy camps that offer little variety. I would have loved to see more DLC enemies utilized as well, and I don't really understand why they are so scarce. I think the DLC enemies are less than 10% of the game's enemy pool, and I want to see more of them. I really like the RNG aspect of Nightreign. Every time you open a chest or defeat a boss, you will get a loot drop which will give you weapons to use. Since this game is heavily tied to classes, you would think that a lot of the weapons you get are going to be useless. But this is far from the case, as every single weapon has a passive effect tied to it that stays active while it is in your inventory, encouraging you to get as many of these useful weapons as possible. You can always drop these weapons to your teammates and trade them around, not to mention that sometimes weird shit will work. A Revenant with a colossal sword may seem a bit silly, but it can genuinely be great. What would also be great is you subscribing. Do it. Before some Night Lord talk, there is one more thing we have to go through: the field and night bosses. Most of the field bosses in this game are quite fun to fight, especially with 3 people. There are a lot of hidden mechanics the game has which you can learn on your own, such as the Raider ultimate stunning the Falling Star Beast. Of course, repetition can be a problem here, but since these are just fodder bosses meant to be farmed, I don't mind it too much. It would be nice to see some more Dark Souls bosses come back as field bosses though. An actual problem I have with this system are the big dangerous red icon bosses on the map. These guys are usually stronger than the night bosses and are extremely hard to kill. While on the surface this isn't that bad, it mostly depends on what type of boss this is. I never had trouble killing an ancient hero of Zamor in the field compared to how much trouble I have with something like the Ancestor Spirit, which has extremely tiny hitboxes while running a lot, and that does not work well with its gigantic damage sponge of health bar and high damage attacks. Unfortunately, most of these marked bosses are pretty bad. The Tree Spirit and the Dragon come to mind as the first examples. They are not good fights even with 3 people, they're just unfun to fight and burn too much time. One fun thing I like about the bosses are these random raid events which can sometimes occur. I've only fought the Fell Omen on it so far, and while these raids can be unpredictable and can wipe out your party, completing them will offer way better rewards than most things in the map. My main gripe with this system is that there doesn't seem to be a single Dark Souls boss who does this. I wish there was, because I would love if someone like Artorias or Gale decides to raid my party. Why can't we have this? And honestly, these raids happen too rarely and need to happen more. The night bosses themselves are usually more of a hit than a miss, thankfully. I particularly enjoy fights such as the Tree Sentinel Gang or the Gaping Dragon, and some fights like the Ancient Dragon surprisingly also work with 3 people to create an actual decent fight compared to the base game. Unfortunately, there are a lot of problems here too. Demi-humans are just extremely boring and unfun to fight, and bosses such as Wormface are terrible and offer almost no fun gameplay even with 3 people. Another more important problem is night boss repetition. I've encountered the Dragonkin Soldier twice on 2 separate Night Lords as a night boss, and it sucks that this is the boss that was repeated considering how bad of a fight this is in the game. 2 things I wish the night bosses had more of is the Dark Souls integration and more originality. Why are the only bosses we got from Dark Dark Souls ones that are usually considered kind of underwhelming. The Nameless King and Dancer are the only truly iconic bosses that made it into Nightreign, and I don't really understand why bosses like the Centipede Demon had a special place in the game, but bosses like, for example, Artorias or Quelaag lack that place. I feel like even the Bed of Chaos could be made into somewhat of an interesting boss in this game, and saying that feels so wrong. Instead of repeating the Dragonkin Soldier twice, why couldn't there be Midir or something? The second problem is that after the first night, all of these bosses are ripped straight from base Elden Ring, with pretty much no significant modifications to their movesets. I love the Tree Sentinel gang because it offers 3 opponents at once that are completely unique to Nightreign. Elden Ring does not have this fight, but something like the Dragonkin Soldier is literally just from the base game. I want to see more unique scenarios like this. Also, the Frost version of Commander Neil is the worst boss in the game. Please remove it. The rewards you get from slaying the night bosses also feel extremely underwhelming compared to the vast amount of weapons you obtain, usually giving you some very niche buff that is barely useful or rarely tied to your class. It's really underwhelming as a reward considering how powerful the foe you slew was. And finally, the Night Lords. They are great. All of the ones I fought so far are extremely well telegraphed and fair to fight. They feel like the ultimate evolution of combat in FromSoft, especially with all the great movesets the characters in the game get. Even fighting them solo can be pretty fun, despite how multiplayer dependent they are. My favorite one is currently the Centaur. I love the way the camera moves to show you what is going on, but just seeing how well made Gladius was made me really hooked onto this game. Of course, there are some bullshit moments here and there like this, and some major frame drop issues on particular attacks, but for the most part bosses are fair and these issues rarely happen. The night bosses like Ogre feel more like that classic From spectacle rather than an actual boss fight, and I think that is fine. The fight is visually great. FromSoft games always have to have at least one of these fights. My main gripe with the Night Lords comes from the runback. Nightreign is of course a roguelike game, but it is also a Souls game. Souls games are known for letting you fight a boss over and over until you have mastered it, but Nightreign unfortunately does not offer that. The only way to fight a boss again right now is to get to the end of their expedition, and I think that is quite bad. I really think there should be some sort of boss selection mode where you can practice the boss as much as you want, either solo or with friends after you have seen it the first time in an expedition, or just fight the bosses again without having to go through usually over 40 minutes of gameplay to get there. Upon winning or losing an expedition, the player will obtain a currency and some relics they can use at a relic altar. This is basically your roguelike progression system, and I have very mixed feelings about it. On one hand, the relics you get can be extremely useful or really bad, which is great for a roguelike game. They offer some really unique properties to your runs. On the other, I am quite disappointed that this is the only post-game roguelike gameplay element Nightreign has to offer. There are no other ways to build your characters, and that is very underwhelming. Why couldn't there be a way for you to unlock different starting weapons for your characters, or perhaps even some ability upgrades? Now, there is an urn and a goblet for every character, but all these do is just switch out the relic slots. There is also a massive lack of quality of life features for these relics. You currently cannot sell them upon completing an expedition, and you just cannot sell the ones you have bought from the bazaar jar, meaning that they are cluttering your relic pool for absolutely no reason. One last thing that happened while I was writing the script is that From actually added these special Night Lords, buffed versions of existing ones with new attacks and stuff. This is on one hand great. It is a step in the right direction by giving consistent updates to this game and making players come back for something to do. But on the other, this boss fight against the buffed version of the Jaw will only be available until the end of June, meaning that this is a limited time event, meant to be replaced by another event when it ends. This means that FromSoft is leaning into that FOMO mindset, forcing players to play the game before the deadline so they can experience it and claim the rewards. I don't know how I feel about this, and I haven't fought this boss yet, but I've seen some footage and goddamn does it look cool, and I'm excited to see what they bring to the table with these buffed bosses. Another post-game mechanic are the shifting earth events I spoke about earlier. In this update, they made it possible to select which shifting earth event you want, and that's great. But I would love to see even more expansion of this system, and maybe even allow the player to spawn every single one at once. All of the earths are in different locations after all, there would be no overlaps. This is where we currently stand. Nightreign is a great dive into the roguelike genre by From, but it is also a very problematic game that needs to be carefully nurtured to become something worth coming back to. One thing that I noticed when I began playing is that the game has an upcoming paid DLC expansion set to release in late 2025. I don't know how I feel about this. FromSoft is the type of developer to completely abandon their games after a while, and Nightreign is just not the type of game to survive that. Fortunately, it seems that From is taking this game a bit more seriously, as it gets regular patch notes that fix various problems the community has been vocal about, and that is great. I hope it keeps going. I hope FromSoft lets this game grow into something massive. Over the years, there is potential to have hundreds of enemy types, dozens of night Night Lords and an even bigger pool of characters. I hope the game does not jump off a cliff and stop updating. If they need some sort of income to keep going, I really wouldn't mind if skins become paid as long as obtaining them via the currency is still possible. Nightreign is currently not a live service game on paper, but I wish it was. Thanks for watching and have a good night.